Okay, so my first slide is on Customer 2.0. How many of you have even heard of Customer 2.0? Of course, Lee has, and I've got one hand in the back. So your first question to me is, what the is Customer 2.0? Customer 2.0 is the new empowered customer, where the balance of power has shifted from the salesperson onto the customer. And that's all it is. It's a new concept, but it's real. 53% of the companies that have been interviewed say, they may not know the word, Customer 2.0, but they recognize and see this shift in power as having a big impact on what they're doing. And they're recognizing that if their sales forces continue to sell the way they used to, that they're not going to be able to leverage this shift in power. So what the hell am I talking about? Let me show it to you visually. I'm going to come out here because I want you to focus on the slides and not on me for a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to get to the back of the room. So the way I'm going to show this to you is I'm going to put a sales process up. And the sales process I'm going to use is mine, because why should I use someone else's? So if you're not familiar with my book, Baseline Selling, or my training methodology by the same name, Baseline Selling's sales process uses the baseball diamond because it's so easy to recognize it, it's so intuitive, it's so memorable, and it just works. So the evolution of the sales process as an opportunity moves from suspect to prospect to qualified to closed is represented by each of the four bases. And there's criteria to move from base to base to base to base. So I'll walk you through it ever so quickly. To get to first base, which is when we have a first meeting scheduled, we have to engage a prospect, we have to find an issue that they want to solve, and we have to schedule a first meeting. Now our salespeople are on first base. Once we're on first base, and this can be a face-to-face meeting or it can be a scheduled phone meeting, we have to determine that they do, in fact, need what we have. We have to identify their compelling reasons to buy, and this is one of the most significant turning points in the sales process. A compelling reason to buy is not that they need what we have and there's an expiration date. For instance, popular examples of that is commercial insurance, commercial real estate with leases expiring, copiers and printers with leases expiring. Those aren't compelling reasons to buy, those are just conditions. A compelling reason to buy is usually emotional, and it's driving the decision, but most salespeople don't know to find it, don't know how to get to it, and aren't able to leverage it. So these are the compelling reasons that would drive the prospect to choose something like what you're selling. Plus, the compelling reasons to buy it from you instead of a competitor. Then, we need to develop, your salespeople need to develop what I call SOB quality. And rather than go through all of what that is, let's suffice to say they need to differentiate themselves from your competition. In the end, SOB quality is the point in time where your prospects are paying more attention to your salespeople than to your competitors. And they need to be able to quantify the cost of the problem that your customer or prospect is having. That gets them to second base. Then to get to third base, they need to know that the prospect is committed to solving the problem, that they'll spend a little more money to do business with you. The salesperson needs to understand the timeline for making a decision. They need to know how the decision-making process and criteria are going to work, and whatever other factors you have in your own world that tell you it's a qualified opportunity. And then once it's qualified, that's where your salespeople can talk about the company, the capabilities, the value proposition, make a needs and cost-appropriate presentation, and close. Okay? So that is what I call order. That's a formal, structured sales process. It's only my half of the process. It doesn't have your part of the process in there, which would come later, where we would map the things that have to happen in your world into the right base paths. But I want to show you what Customer 2.0 means in the context of the sales process. The typical entry point today, think about it. Your salespeople call a prospect repeatedly over and over and over and over again. They don't get return calls. Suddenly a prospect calls. Yeah, we're interested in talking to you. Now, they hadn't returned a call for 6 months. Why are they suddenly interested in talking? They're ready. It's all about timing. Or an RFP comes through, or an RFQ comes through. They're ready. Or you get a call out of the blue. They're ready. And when they're ready, it means that they're here. And your salespeople are getting invited in much later in the process. And your prospects are dangling the carrot in front of their eyes, and they're saying, so give us a presentation. Tell us about your company. Tell us what you can do. Tell us how you can help. And it just so happens that the very thing your salespeople are best at, the very thing they're most comfortable doing, the very thing they look forward to that they think differentiates them from everybody else is their ability to talk about the company, its capabilities, the value proposition, make a presentation, and do a proposal. That's the easy part. That's not even selling. That's just presenting. So the challenge is, do they accept the customer's invitation to run from third to home and skip all of that real estate that's sitting between first and second base and between second and third base? And in that real estate is all that important stuff between first and second, including the compelling reasons to buy and SOB quality and the cost of the problem. And those three things, if your salespeople can do it effectively, those are the leverage points of the sales process. Those create urgency. Those allow your salespeople to easily qualify the prospect. Okay, when there's urgency, when your prospect recognizes that your salespeople get it and they're listening and they understand the real problem and they've gotten to a place where nobody else has gotten to and they've differentiated themselves from everybody else, they'll self-qualify. They'll volunteer all that stuff that happens between second and third. They can't wait to get it done. So I've walked into a lot of technology companies who were back in the 90s and doing what Lee talked about, and they were doing solution selling. And most of those technology companies say, well, we are doing that qualifying piece, but we're doing it over at first base. We're starting with all that qualifying stuff. And my question to them is, and how's that working for you? How many of those first base meetings are getting converted? And very few, because the prospect doesn't want to deal with those questions early in the sales process. There's no incentive for them to talk about how much money they'll spend and what their timeline is and the decision-making process. Why should they have to talk about that stuff if they haven't even decided they like you and want to work with you and that you can help them? So moving it forward in the sales process doesn't help anything. You need the stuff that's planted between first and second base to happen before they can get to the stuff between second and third. So the real challenge is when they come in and they're invited to run from third to home, are your salespeople capable of turning that thing on its ears and backing up in the sales process to uncover the prospect's compelling reasons to buy, and ask the tough questions that Lee was talking about, and be the trusted advisor. And what we're talking about right here with this illustration is consultative selling. And it's through consultative selling that your salespeople become or reach a trusted advisor status. So the question for you is, here's the first question: how many of your salespeople today recognize what's happening to them as a result of Customer 2.0? How many of them are recognizing what's actually happening? And how many of them can turn that challenge around and move the process backwards instead of going, oh, yippee yahoo, they want a presentation. Woohoo! I'm good at that.